Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. I'm going to start this video off by making 2 points that, at first, might seem separate, but are in fact interwoven, and hopefully you'll see how in just a moment, okay? When Remastered Mob of the Dead became a meme when Chronicles came out, Jason Blundell came on camera on interview with, I can't remember if it was Smith Plays, or Johnny J, or JC, or Reed, or someone at the Chronicles event. He basically sat down with them and said, well, I might have some plans for Remastered Mob of the Dead. Except he didn't say it in those words. He basically said, because that's all Jason ever says when it comes to things about the future. He just sort of goes, and hints like that. But he basically said he might have some plans for it. Or essentially he was very cognizant of the fact that people wanted it back, but it wouldn't have made sense for it to be in Chronicles, and so he was just holding it off for another time. And a lot of people were saying, well, maybe in that case, it's going to be the DLC map that you get, like the Giant with Black Ops 3, that's a pre-order bonus, except for Black Ops 4. That was what people were suggesting at the time. That's the first point I wanted to make. The second is that when the first issue of the Call of Duty Zombies comic came out, and we got that new loading screen at the end, people started speculating and saying, well, this is a new loading screen for an old map. For example, we had a Nocturne and Totem one remade, we had a Ascension one remade, things like that. We had Nuketown as well, which wasn't in Chronicles, but regardless, we had maps with remade loading screens, and then we ended up getting some of those maps in DLC 5 as remastered maps, okay? And this is where the connection comes in. In the most recent issue of the comic, issue number 6 that I've got just here, and I've got a live reading of on my channel if you want to watch it, link in the description down below, there's a loading screen at the end, and it turns out in this one to not just be a Nuketown, or a Nacht, or an Ascension, but it's freaking Mob of the Dead. Mob of the Dead's loading screen is back, but it's changed. This is a remastered Mob of the Dead loading screen. That's what you're seeing right now. And so, I can't help but wonder, and we're going to dive into the specifics of it in a moment, by the way, but first, I can't help but wonder if, in the past, when we saw remastered loading screens leading to remastered maps, and we saw Jason Blundell saying that he still had plans for Mob of the Dead, and he hadn't forgotten about it, and he was being very careful about what he did and didn't put into Chronicles, and they probably could have put it in if they wanted to. Does this mean we are getting not just a remastered Mob of the Dead loading screen, but a remastered Mob of the Dead map in the next Treyarch game? At this point, the evidence is stacking and stacking up. And I think it's a possibility. There's stuff in the comic as well that leads to it being even more potentially of a possibility in my mind. So, without further ado, let's talk about the loading screen itself, because it's hella interesting, well, in my opinion at least, and then we can maybe have some closing thoughts after that, okay? The first thing I want to go for here is that not only is this a remastered mob loading screen, but this might also be telling us what the on-disc map is for Black Ops 4, the Shadows of Evil equivalent of the next Treyarch game. I present to you the top part of this image, okay? I'm actually not going to hold it up because it's going to be impossible to see. I'll just overlay it on screen right now. They've got a newspaper clipping behind the front page here, which is very similar to what they did before with the original Mob of the Dead loading screen. The original one said Wall Street in panic as stocks crash, dated October 17th, 1917, but this is zombie, in quotes, and then Parliament gathers for emergency meeting. This fits right in with the disappearing newspaper clipping and the transforming newspaper clipping on Der Eisendrache, talking about there being a parade in London and then there is a zombie outbreak. It fits right in with that same clipping appearing on Moon and a couple of other places, if I recall correctly, as well. There are signs on signs on signs at this point, pointing towards the possibility of London being the next map. And I just want to reiterate that for 1 second because it's a big damn deal. This is legitimate evidence for possibly us now knowing the next 2 Zombies maps we're going to get. We might be seeing the future right here and right now. We might be getting remastered Mob of the Dead on disc, potentially with the transit crew or something crazy, and we might be getting a London Zombies map on disc. It's a big damn deal. There's other stuff on here as well that I do want to talk about, because they got rid of the ADFGX. They got rid of, remember this, Al, don't forget, escape plan. Step 1, find the warden's key, etc., etc. That has been torn out. And instead, in its place, you have some scrolling from Richtofen this time, okay? Richtofen also cannot get that same afterlife symbol out of his head. He's got the blood vials written down there. Actually, you know what? To be honest, I'm assuming this is Richtofen, but you could probably make an argument for it still being Al, because then it would still be his notepad. We know that he does sketches of stuff as well, and the fact that the symbol is in his head, and then it's in his head as well in the new drawings in the new loading screen, means, yeah, I guess you could argue that this is Al again, and he sees Richtofen coming in, maybe, with those stasis pods underneath Alcatraz. Maybe that's what he's sketching there. He's like saying, oh, look, there's this guy that just came through a portal. He was pretty cool. You've also got what looks like somebody talking to somebody, and I'm guessing that's Ferguson talking to Richtofen, just because it kind of looks like Richtofen's silhouette. And so again, I guess it would sort of make sense if this was from Al's point of view, but then why would Al be really looking at the blood vials there specifically? Why would he be saying, I have a secret, I must follow the plan? It's probably Richtofen's journal, this bit. This is probably from Richtofen's side of things, in my opinion. Those stasis pods look like a different design to the ones that we saw in the comic, which is really weird. Like, really, really weird. And, I mean, it looks like there's also some kind of weird sketch going on in the middle bottom here that looks like that might be a 5 minus something. Really hard to say what's going on. In the top, there's a toothbrush with a razor inside and a triangle in the razor. You what, mate? And then you've got this coil in the top right attached to this thing there that is basically right above that sketch of the two people talking to each other and potentially exchanging some stuff. So this, in my mind, is just mind-blowing, because this legitimately could be the beginnings of a Mob of the Dead remaster. And this legitimately could be the beginnings of a London Zombies map. And those are both two things the community has wanted for a long time. And that's not even going into the depth of what's actually in this comic itself. I mean, this thing has some really good slides about Alcatraz as well. Like, that's Alcatraz right there. In fact, you know what? Let's jump into that information a little bit, because I might as well include it in this video instead of separating out and doing it in a separate one. In the comic, Richtofen goes and meets Undead Him and collects the blood vials, which is something that we hear about in the timeline, so that's fine. He then goes to Alcatraz, and this is where things get really interesting, because this is the first time we actually ever see the lab underneath Alcatraz prison, which is also mentioned and was mentioned for the first time in the timeline. So he goes to the lab under Alcatraz and picks up some more blood. He then goes and visits himself, mentioned in the timeline and in Revelations, and says, "Trust me, Edward, you will need this blood. When the time comes, it will protect you." He then goes back to the cursed prison, and he says, "I know the rules are different here. Perhaps different enough. I suppose we shall see." He goes in a lift, and then this mystery door opens. He says, "Well, have you made a decision?" Because he's asking the transit crew if they want to basically follow his orders or not. The crew go in a load of stasis pods. He says, right on time, and then the crew from Zetsubo arrive at that exact moment. Dempsey's like, "Great, another one of you. That's all we need, Richtofen." He greets himself saying, "Doctor," which is just awesome. And then Dempsey's like, "Who are the guys in the pods?" "Just some old friends. Try not to worry about them. Just like you. They are safe." And then the crew go back to Zetsubo. That's their quick zip in and out. The transit crew, though, are still in Alcatraz. And this is why I wanted to come back to the fact that not only is it the loading screen that's interesting here, but it's also the content of the actual story as well. The transit crew are in the pods, and Richtofen says they are safe. He also says that he's going to come back for them when the final world is ready. which I'm presuming is either Monty's Perfect World or another world that is after Monty's Perfect World, which is some other extra plan that Richtofen has that we haven't even really been privy to yet. And if that's the case, are we going to see transit characters, the transit crew, in a London map in the final world after Monty's plan has been foiled in the next game? What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. I think that would be pretty cool, but I'm interested in hearing what you think. I've been MrRoflWaffles. Drop a like on the video if this has got you at all excited for the next game, to read the issue of the comic or anything, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye-bye.